wants him in the games until he dies playing. Acknowledge.
Acknowledge. Master Control.
End of line.
Okay, I've had a lot of people ask me some questions about the Atari Flashback 7 in regards to some of its games. The Flashback does come with a joystick controller that's wireless. I would recommend getting a wired one if you can. But they wanted to know games like Breakout, Super Breakout, can you use a paddle controller with the game system. The Flashback 7 does have a DB9 that will allow you to connect other controllers, including joysticks and the original Atari paddle controllers. AtGames even has their own version of the paddle controllers, which work very well. But people also wanted to know if the Indianapolis 500 game can use the driving controllers that came with the Atari 2600, or is it only limited to be with the joysticks that they include? Well, let's take a look and see what we can find out about the Flashback 7 and joystick, paddle, and driving controllers. As you can see here, I have the Atari Flashback 7 set up with the wireless joystick, original Atari 2600 paddles, and an original Atari 2600 driving controller. So here you can see I have the Atari Flashback 7 currently loaded with the regular Breakout game. I have currently connected 2 of the original paddle controllers in the left controller port. And I am happy to report that the original Atari paddle controllers here do work perfectly fine. As you can see here, the pots I've cleaned. These are original 2600 controllers from when I had my Atari back in 1977, and you can see Breakout works fine. Now, since I have 4 paddle controllers, you can set up the paddles in ports 1 and 2 and play Warlords. So the Warlords game also will work just fine with the paddle controllers. And I have to say, Warlords is a great party game. If you have a few friends around, it's definitely worth playing 4-player Warlords. Now, the next game we're going to look at is Indianapolis 500. Now, this did not use the actual paddle controllers. It used the driving controllers. They're slightly different. Unlike the paddle controllers, you could spin them around continuously. The paddle controllers will go only so far and hit an endpoint, and you would go the other way. Now, trying to use the joystick, which is how it was set up here, the control is really bad. I mean, any game that was designed for the driving controller, which actually was one game, Indianapolis 500, or the paddle controllers like Breakout and Warlords, Kaboom, those type of games you really need the fine motor control that you can do with a paddle. You simply cannot do it with a joystick. So here I have an original driving controller. Now this one is actually from Best Electronics. It's been reconditioned. I purchased it recently. Works fine on my regular Atari with my Harmony cartridge and Indianapolis 500. I am plugging it into the left controller port, and the button will accelerate the car, but there is no response from the steering wheel. No matter which way you turn it, you get no response. The button does work, so this is actually really disappointing. This is a really good game on the Atari that's completely ruined because you can only use it with the joystick. There is just no response. So what I've also tried here, I unplugged the driver controller just as a test. I knew it wouldn't work anyway, but I plugged the paddle controller back in, and as I figured, no response whatsoever. So that's really disappointing that they did bother putting that game in and not giving it the ability to play it properly. Using a joystick, as you can see here, is just lousy. Your control is just not going to be there. It's a very fast-paced game, and I think AtGames dropped the ball here. It should have been able to support the driver controller just like the other games supported a joystick or the original paddle controllers. So to sum it up real quick, the paddle games Breakout, Super Breakout, and Warlords work fantastic with real paddle controllers. However, the one game that requires a driving controller, and they included it, Indianapolis 500, doesn't work with a driving controller. And so for that, you guys get a fail. Why would they include a game that requires precision in a driving game and have you use a joystick? So the Atari Flashback 7 again gets a failure on the driving controller. It's still fun. It does include some other games, but it's really disappointing they include a game that would be a lot better if they had supported the controller.